In this chapter, we're going to go over the basic car modeling technique by creating a simple car hood. This is a technique that will basically be applied to everything you create from blueprints. First, let's start off by setting up the blueprints. In top view, I'm going to delete the default cube and add myself a plane. In edit mode of the plane, with all the vertices selected, I'm going to slide the image window over, and from the image menu, I'm going to select Open Image. And navigate to wherever your reference folder is, and select hood_blueprints. This is basically the same hood that the Camaro has, but I simplified it a little bit. We have the front view at the top, then the top view in the middle, and the side view at the bottom. So, mouse over the 3D view again, and with all the vertices selected, press the U key for the UV mapping options, and select Project from View. With all those UVs selected, scale them up to encompass all the blueprints. Now we're done with that window. You'll see the blueprints on our plane. If you don't see your blueprints on your plane, that means you haven't gone into the toolbar on the right side of the 3D view by pressing the plus sign at the top of it and enabling the option Textured Solid beneath the shading options in the Display tab. If you enable that, then in regular solid shading mode, you can see any images you have UV mapped onto your objects. So now we're going to separate each of these views into their own objects. To do that, we're going to use the knife tool and cut an edge between them. Now what I like to do is use the bottom of the 3D view as a ruler to get a nice straight cut. This is a really old school way of doing it that I just got used to. You can actually press the K key for the knife tool and then press the C key to constrain it to an angle so you can cut it perfectly straight. I'm just using the bottom of the 3D view. It's what I got used to. Now select the vertices just for the side view of the hood, press the P key and separate that selection. And do the same with the top view of the hood. Select those vertices, press P, and separate that selection. Now we have three different objects. We're going to rotate these so we create a sort of 3D representation. But first, we're going to select them all, and in the left side toolbar again, which is the T key, or the plus sign at the top left of the 3D view, select Origin, and then select Origin to Geometry. This moves the pivot points to the center of each of those objects so that we can rotate around the center of them. First, for the purpose of mirror modifiers later on, we have to make sure that each of these blueprints objects are centered on every axis. So select the top view, and if you press Shift and C, it will reset the cursor to 0.000. With the top view selected, go into the toolbar again, select Origin, and then select Origin to 3D Cursor. That will move the pivot point to 0.000 where the 3D cursor is. So now, in edit mode of the top view, zoom in real close and move it down so the center line on the hood is directly over the origin point. So we have our hood centered, and these objects don't matter so much because we can align these with the hood, which is already at the center. So now we can begin creating our 3D representation of the blueprints. Select the top plane, which is the front view, and rotate it that way. And in front view of Blender, rotate it again 90 degrees. And move it on the y-axis so that the center line on that hood matches up with the top blueprints. And I'm going to move it up out of the way so it's not intersecting. And I'm going to move it back behind the hood. You can see the edge, you can see the extent that the top view blueprints go. So move this plane to the very edge of those blueprints, right here. Now select the bottom plane, which is the side view blueprints, and in side view, rotate it 90 degrees. And again, we're going to center this by moving it on the y-axis and having that intersect with the center line of the hood there. Now in front view, I have to move that forward a little bit. It's intersecting the back plane. On the back plane, you can see the maximum height of the hood is this line here. In the side view blueprints, you can also see the maximum height of the hood. We have to match those two heights up. So I'm going to move that up on the z-axis so that the top of both of those blueprints line up. Just like that. It's intersecting a little, so I'm going to move that away. And here's our little blueprint system. One last thing we have to do is rotate all of these 90 degrees counterclockwise. Because right now when you go into front view, you see the side view of the blueprints. We're going to do that by pressing Shift and C to make sure that the cursor is centered at 0, 0, 0. And in the 3D view, in the header at the bottom, go into the pivot point options and select 3D cursor. Now we can rotate around the 3D cursor. This makes sure that the system stays centered. Now we can start the actual modeling. In top view, add a mesh plane. And in edit mode, first let's turn off editing around the 3D cursor by going back into the pivot point options and selecting median point. That's the default option. So let's start off right away by adding a mirror modifier. In the modifier options, which is the little wrench icon, select Add Modifier and select Mirror. And you might have to change what axis it's mirrored on, but in this case the x-axis is the axis we want it mirrored. You can see that I can move it past the center so that it kind of intersects each other. We can fix that by enabling clipping under the options in the modifier. That way when the vertices reach the center, they stop and merge together there. So let's begin tracing. I'm going to delete the top two vertices so that we just have one edge. I'm going to move that edge to the center and to the bottom. And from here, we just trace the blueprints from top view. Keep it simple at first, only placing a couple vertices around the corners. And there we have a basic outline of the hood. I'm going to go through and make some other connections, like in the center there, and at this bevel, and any other details you have in your object. Make sure to stay consistent with how many vertices you have in parallel edges. For example, I have 2 here, and 2 next to that, and 2 on the end there. However, I have 1 vertex up here, but none at the edge down there. So I'm going to subdivide the bottom edge to stay consistent with that. And we need some more edges on the side here. So I added 2 more edges in the 2 more vertices in the center line. Now we have it drawn out in top view. We have to go into side view now and align all of these vertices with the side view blueprints. So just select a few vertices at a time and move them up and start aligning everything. If you have decent enough blueprints, this process will be pretty easy. It's simply a matter of tracing in every view. Now let's go into front view and see if everything is aligned there. And it's pretty good. So there's a simple 3-dimensional edge cage or wire cage representation of the hood. Now we can actually start facing everything. So select 3 or 4 vertices at a time and press the F key to face it. I recalculated the normals there by pressing Ctrl and N to make sure the faces are facing me. Now over here, I'm going to select these 2 vertices and I'm going to extrude it, making sure to follow the natural curves that these edges are creating. And in side view, I'm going to move that into place, basically using intuition, just knowing the way that the curves of the hood flow. And add a face on the edge there. And go through adding more faces. I have an extra vertex on the right here. So to accommodate that, I'm going to add an edge loop in the middle of that face there. So I can add a quad there, and then boom, 1 on the end. Now you can see this isn't really following a good curve. So I'm going to just fix that. Make it nice and smooth. Of course, we're going to have to go in the other views and make sure everything still looks good. So go back in side view and make sure everything is still nice and curvy. It's a pretty flat object anyway, so we're not going to have a whole lot of trouble with that. Now we need another vertex at the top too, since we added that new edge. Making sure everything's still aligned right in every view. And there we go. There's our simple hood. Now let's move these blueprints to a hidden layer. I don't need to look at them. Now if you go in side view, things are a little bit too low poly at the top here. So let's bring those blueprints back real quick. And I'm going to add a loop cut there by pressing Ctrl and R, but then using the middle mouse wheel, scale it up to add two different cuts. And I'm going to move these so that the top of this hood now has a little bit of a curve to it. Perfect. Now I can hide the blueprints layer again. And in the toolbar, I'm going to smooth the shading on that. But it kind of got rid of our bevel, didn't it? We're going to fix that by adding a subsurf modifier and adding more edge loops to get some nice sharp bevels. So let's do that. Add another modifier called subdivision surface. I'm going to crank subdivisions up to at least 2. And now the hood is nice and smooth. So let's start adding some loop cuts. Press Ctrl and R again and slide that edge all the way over near the corner of that bevel. Do the same thing at the bottom. And there, we cut a nice, sexy looking bevel into that hood, didn't we? Now I'm going to add a loop cut near the center as well. And I'm going to select this center edge by holding Alt and right clicking on one of those edges, and it selects all of them. I'm going to move that up on the Z-axis so that the center of our hood has a little point like that. So that's our basic shape, but now we have to extrude it down for some depth to give the object some thickness. To do that, we're going to have to follow the same rules of beveling and have a loop cut around the border of the whole object. So let's start with the top and add a loop cut near the edge at the top there, real close to the edge like that. Let's do the same thing with the side here. Add a loop cut near the edge there, but that extended down to a point where we didn't really want it to go. We wanted it to wrap all the way around, but that's alright. Just continue adding loop cuts near the edges, and we're going to fix that. Now I want to add an edge loop down here, but it's adding all this extra detail on the left side. We can fix that by simply hiding those vertices and adding a loop without them, just like that. Now unhide them, and you'll see that it did not add any extra detail over there. But we have a bit of an end-on situation down here. We want a connection between these two vertices. To do that, press the K key, hover over one of the vertices, select that, and then hover over to the other vertex, select that, and press Enter. Now we're almost done. We just have a little bit of an extra detail over here. There's only supposed to be one vertex on the edge, but there's 3. But we can fix that by selecting the outer vertex there, the other outer vertex, then the original vertex in the center, pressing W, the Specials menu, select Merge, and select At Last. That will merge those two vertices at the last one. And now I'm going to move that vertex there just so it has equal spacing. And there we added all of these new edges around the edges of the object. So now we can begin depth extrusions. So select all of the very outer edges there, just like that. Press E to extrude, and extrude it down on the Z-axis just a little bit. And then press E again and extrude it down as far down as you want the depth to go. Now you'll see that adding those edge loops near the corner there gave us a nice sharp bevel on the edge of the hood. It's a little bit too thick, so I'm going to thin that out a little bit. And there's our completed hood object.